Don't Call Me Maybe by Adai. Chapter 6. Misdial. Problem Children Group Chat. Chat includes Funky Elbows, Zero, Alien Queen, Ashido, Nyum, Ida, Small Bean, Midoriya, Mr. Murder, Bakugo, Mind Meld, Shinso, Octopus, Shoji, Keklian, Hagagare, Kung Fu Panda, Ojiro, Yao Mamo, Yao Yabozu, Defying Gravity, Uraraka, Pikachu, Kaminari, Da Hard, Kirishima, Funk Butch, Jiro, Frankophile, Aoyama, Gurmit, Asui, Snow White, Koda, Large Boy, Sato, Eiji, Tokoyami, Fucking Never, Todoroki, and Aizawa. 321. Aizawa. Guys, holy shit, look at this. Cat Blob. Crowl. Okay, I know Mem is on patrol, but I know you're awake, Hizashi. You can't hide from my cat content. Mind Meld. Sensei. Wrong chat. Pikachu. I'm fucking amazing! Small Bean. Oh, I love that artist! They make some really funny pixel art animations, especially with kiwis. Have you seen this one? Angie. I approve of this bird content. Aizawa. Small Bean. I think we broke him. Mind Meld. He broke himself by not checking he was sending the link to the right chat, to be honest. Aizawa. You saw nothing. At Noom. How do I delete something from the chat logs permanently? Small Bean. Daniel-kun turns off his notifications at night, except for emergency calls. Also, he's been really overworked lately, so wake him up and I'll personally make you regret it tomorrow. Aizawa. Pardon? Mind Meld. Ballsy. I like it. Edgy. I guess that time of night where inhibitions are lowered and we say things we regret. Thank you for the demonstration, Midoriya-kun. Small Bean. Am I trembling in my slippers? Yes! Am I going to allow Sensei to wake up my very, very tired boyfriend just because he accidentally sent something funny and has a reputation to uphold despite the fact we all know he is literally willing to die for us and almost has on several occasions? No! Mind Meld. Fair. Pikachu. Fair. Edgy. Fair. Aizawa. Fair. Now go to sleep, the lot of you. Mind Meld. Are you going to send the link to Present Mike at midnight? Aizawa. Sleep. 5:50. Nyum. Midoriya-kun, I am a guest! Please never threaten anyone on my behalf ever again! Small Bean. No promises! Nyum. And Aizawa Sensei, I've unfortunately yet to find any way to permanently delete chats from the chat log. My deepest apologies for both this and my boyfriend's threats. Aizawa. That's fine. Fucking never. Wanna know why Tenya knows you can't delete stuff? Aizawa. Do I want to know? Nyum. Todoroki-kun, it's really not relevant. Fucking never. Disagree. He was visiting Tensei-san in the hospital and left his phone on the chair while he went to the bathroom, and the chat was being really noisy, and Ida had his phone sound on, and Tensei was super drugged up and got annoyed, and sent a message to the entire chat saying, Izuku, what was it again? Small Bean. Don't know who you are, but shut the fuck up! Nyum. That was unfortunate, not one of his finest moments. Aizawa. No, that sounds exactly like Tensei. He probably laughed about it when you told him later, didn't he? Called it. Alien Queen. Wait, hold up! Aizawa. And there go the last semblances of peace. Alien Queen. Are we not going to talk about that Sensei's comments with that link? Keklian. Cat Blob? Funky Elbows. Crowl. Mr. Murder. Holy shit. Nyum. Bakugo-kun, language! Mr. Murder. I was quoting Aizawa Sensei 4 Eyes. Nyum. Small Bean. Congrats, Kachan, you broke him! Aizawa. Stop chatting and get ready for class. Small Bean. Yes, Aizawa Sensei! The warbling sound from Shota's phone vibrating against the fake wood of his nightstand woke him up from what had been a deeply pleasant nap, devoid, for once, of any terrors or memories. That feeling of relaxation snapped into worry as soon as Shota angled his screen to see who was calling midday on the weekend and was greeted with the caller ID Kirishima Aizawa.
Kirishima, what's wrong? Are the villains?
Shota demanded as soon as he swiped his thumb to accept his student's call. His phone was pressed between his shoulder and his ear as he strode across the room to grab the tracksuit he'd discarded at 7 a.m. upon returning from patrol, and in one motion he jabbed the speaker button on his phone, threw it on his bed, and started stepping into his uniform as he waited anxiously for his student's response. Hi. Hello? A surprised, feminine, and decidedly not Kirishima voice came from the other end of the line. Shota froze for just a second before continuing to zip up the front of his suit.
Who is it? Who is this? Where is Kirishima?
Shota demanded, suspiciously, praying that one of his students hadn't managed to somehow get kidnapped again. Damn shipping trips! Shota thought, cursing himself for not insisting on going with Kirishima, Mina, and Sarah when they asked to go to the mall. I should know better by now! Oh, is Kirishima the owner of this phone? The woman on the other end asked, continuing before Shota could bark back what probably wouldn't have been the most polite answer. I just saw this phone on the ground and figured I'd try and get it back to the owner. There are tons of Red Riot stickers all over the case and as the wallpaper, so I figured it was probably a kid's phone. Shota gave a small snort at that as his hands paused in grabbing his capture weapon. And I figured if it's a kid, they're probably here with their parents.
Why not just turn the phone into the lost and found department?
Shota asked tiredly, the adrenaline that had started to course through his veins just moments earlier now petering out and leaving him slightly irritated. I learned last year that they charge you for found items, the woman on the other end admitted, and so I figured I'd just call his dad. Shota was glad he wasn't drinking any of the water he'd been eyeing on his nightstand because it certainly would have come out his nose. What? He spluttered, my granny to a halt from surprise and like a proper rest. Are you not this Kirishima kid's father? The woman asked meekly on the other end of the line, and Shota gawked at the phone before remembering to answer.
I'm Kirishima's homeroom teacher.
Shota corrected her exasperatedly, and he could practically hear the embarrassment on the other end of the call. My apologies, the woman stammered. It's just the emergency contact info in here suggested a dad sensei? I guess that makes more sense. She muttered the last bit to herself as Shota thanked whatever deities existed that is as she wasn't in the room to see his cheeks burst into flame. Well, Kirishima did have two moms, Shota supposed, so the women probably wouldn't have found another dad contact if she'd kept searching.
I'm sorry for reacting so harshly.
Shota sighed as he stared forlornly at his pillow.
I was taken by surprise. I appreciate you trying to help my student.
Shota was cut off by familiar murmuring from the other line, growing louder until he could at last make out Kirishima's distinct voice alongside the feminine one he'd been talking to. Hi, excuse me, that's my phone. Shota heard Kirishima pant. Kid must have run around half the mall searching for his phone. Oh, there you are! Kirishima, right? The woman's voice grew further away as Shota imagined her giving the phone to a student. Here you go. Oh, your homeroom teacher's on the phone right now. I really have to go. Bye. The woman's departure sounded suspiciously hurried even to Shota, who figured that she was probably beating it before she had to endure any of the awkward conversation that was about to take place between him and his student. Honestly, he didn't blame her. Aizawa-sensei? Kirishima's voice came through much more clearly after a moment, the boy probably having raised his phone to his ear to continue the call.
Here.
Shota grumbled in response. I'm so sorry about that, sensei. Kirishima began to ramble embarrassedly. I guess my phone must have fallen out of my pocket at some point, and I checked the lost and found, but it wasn't there, and I didn't think anyone would like calling you.
Kirishima.
Shota cut him off sharply, rubbing the bridge of his nose with a thumb and forefinger. Yes? The boy in question responded meekly, and Shota rolled his eyes at the mental image of the boy cringing.
I'm going back to my nap.
Shota responded boredly.
Be safe.
Yes, sensei! Kirishima breathed with a sigh of relief, obviously not expecting the man to let him off that easily.
And Kirishima?
Shota probed one last time. Yeah?
Either keep better track of your cell phone or change my name from Dad Sensei in your contacts.
Shota deadpan before swiftly ending the call. Turning his cell on Do Not Disturb, Shota plugged the phone back in, shed his half-adorned hero gear, and flopped back down on his bed to continue his nap. 3 hours later, Shota woke up to a new picture. Problem children group chat, 1621. Alien Queen. Kirishima has regrets. Funky elbows. And here we see the Kirishima Aizawa in its natural habitat in a state of an excruciating embarrassment, his cheeks so red they rival his hair. Following his gaze, we see a cell phone clutched tightly in hand, the got-ended screen mocking him. Never before did he think his emergency contact suggestions could betray him so badly. Alien Queen. I could once polemic, but I'm laughing so hard I can barely type. So, Kira lost his phone, and then a stranger phoned Dad Sensei in his contacts to try to return it. Octopus. Question mark. Punk Butch. And funky elbows. Dad Sensei is Aizawa. Pikachu. I'm crying. Alien Queen. I know! His face is so good! Shota shook his head at the rest of the messages, laughing at Kirishima's misfortune, as well as the boy's weak defense of himself that was doomed before it even began. It was weird, though, despite the entire thing waking him up from his favorite state of being, dead asleep. Shota didn't really mind. He tried not to think on it too much, because he had papers to grade, of course, and not because the thought of him being dead in any of a student's phones make him feel weird emotions he'd almost rather didn't exist. Such a notion was, of course, ridiculous. Unfortunately, that was not the last time that Shota got a call from one of his students that ended up being an accident. It was a Friday after school, and all the teachers had gathered in one of UA's more comfortable conference rooms to go over the week's progress reports. While the monthly progress reports were usually done in a more serious manner, the weekly ones were almost more of an excuse to gossip and complain and occasionally joke about the students and the shenanigans they got up to. Khan was in the middle of complaining about something Manama had recently done, to no one's surprise, when Shota's phone began vibrating in his pocket. Frowning, he dug his phone out and checked the caller ID. Call from Aoyama Yuga. Shota stood up and began walking towards the door, holding the phone to one ear and plugging the other with his free hand as muffled noises came from the other end of the call.
Aoyama, what is it?
Shota demanded, drawing the gaze of a few of his coworkers as he stalked across the room. Shota was greeted with more muffled voices for a moment and was just about to repeat his demand when he finally heard a still somewhat muffled Aoyama on the other end of the line. "Oui, it is true!" came the boy's flamboyant call, and before Shota could ask what he was talking about, Aoyama's budding speech was interrupted by a very far-away sounding Tokoyami.
Aoyama-kun.
The feathered boy appeared to sigh, and Shota stepped slow as he began to realize what had happened.
I can't believe you agree with him. You have to admit that Todoroki-kun has some good points in his arguments, came the voice of Sato, and Shota rolled his eyes before huffing in irritation. Before he could hang up, Shota felt a tap on his elbow and looked down to see President Mike leaning over the back of a couch with concern in his eyes. "Are the little listeners all right?" he questioned, and Shota realized that most of the room was watching him. Fine,
Shota responded with a long-suffering glare at his phone.
Just seems Aoyama somehow managed to butt dial me.
No way! Midnight laughed as Mike's eyes lit up with mischief.
Unfortunately,
Shota confirmed before going to end the call, and suddenly finding the phone no longer in his grasp.
Hizashi!
Shota growled, glaring at the man now running to the other side of the room with barely restrained glee.
Give me back my phone.
Oh, come on, Shota! The blonde man laughed as he narrowly avoided his friend's attempt to regain his phone. Don't you want to tease him? Just a bit?
I want my phone back.
Aizawa deadpanned, aiming another half-hearted swipe at his cell, only for Hizashi to escape once more. Well, I, for one, refuse to pass up on such a good opportunity! Mike huffed and promptly hit the speakerphone button on Shota's cell.
Yamada-san, is it really so wise?
All Might spoke up hesitantly, only for Midnight to lay a reassuring hand on his arm from the seat next to him. Don't worry, she assured him. It won't take it too far. Just let him have his fun.
Not worry, Shota grimaced as his out-of-date cell phone finally registered Hisashi's touch and activated the speaker.
We all know how far his conspiracies will go.
Tokoyami's apparent protest rang throughout the room, and all the teachers were suddenly paying rapt attention. The notion of Todoroki being some kind of conspiracy theorist too much to pass up.
That doesn't mean some of them don't have merit.
Sato countered back, only to be interrupted by Aoyama once more. Oui, the sparkling boy chirped. And you must acknowledge the entertainment they provide, even if unlikely, no?
I mean, I guess.
Came Tokoyami's exasperated sigh a moment later. Come on, dude! Sato's grin could be heard in his voice as he continued. You really telling me that the look on Todoroki's face when he whips out his theory notebook to write down another similarity between Oma and Midoriya isn't priceless? A few amused glances were thrown All Might's way as he flushed a light pink, though no one spoke as they strained in the response.
Well, sure, I guess a little,
Tokoyami conceded.
But you can't really tell me you believe that theory. We've met Midoriya's mom, we've heard about Midoriya's father from him directly, and you still think it's possible that All Might Sensei is his dad.
All eyes in the room were now on the man in question, as his light blush evolved and turned the tips of his ears to mana red, even as he struggled to choke back his suppressed cough. Oh, this is good! Khan chuckled, valiantly ignoring the glare Shota shot his way as his efforts to retrieve his cell phone sent Mike dashing around the room to evade, one hand still holding the ongoing call up in the air. No, that theory seems a bit outlandish, Aoyama admitted with a sigh in response to Tokoyama's question, but you must admit some of his other theories at least make you see things in a different light.
Yeah!
Sato chimed in.
Like, what about that whole thing about Midnight and Yaomomo?
All eyes are now on the 18-plus hero, who shifted in her seat with a mix of intrigue and wariness on her features.
I don't believe I was there for that one,
Tokoyami admitted dryly.
It was a whole thing about Midnight and Yaomomo being related,
Sato explained, and even Midnight's eyes rose skeptically at this.
You know, since they both have black hair and use their quirks through their skin.
And have similar physiques, Aoyama added hesitantly, and the sound of several pro-heroes face-palming echoed throughout the room. I mean, I can see where they're coming from, I guess, Midnight admitted with slightly furrowed brows.
Really now, isn't that enough?
All Might chided.
Is this not an invasion of privacy?
The kid started it by calling Shota, Mike pointed out a bit petulantly, sliding under Shota's reach once more. He's never this lithe on missions, Shota thought somewhat sourly, though he'd admit he wasn't seriously trying to get his phone back and was putting up an effort more out of pretense than anything. He denied if anyone asked, but he was finding this amusing too.
I still think the only one that has any merit is the theory about Shinso.
Tokoyami sighed from the other end of the call, and Shota had to fight to keep a smile off his face. If One hadn't been so excited that Shinso was replacing the spot Mineta had vacated, the teacher might have worried that his students were ostracizing their new classmate. As it was, though, they'd welcome the new one with open arms, or in Midoriya's case, the closed arms of a hug, and Shota wasn't above teasing his students, so he was curious to where this one would go.
Oh, you mean that he's secretly Aizawa Sensei's son?
Sato laughed, and Shota suddenly thought this whole thing was less funny when all his coworkers were staring at him.
Okay, Mike, that's enough.
Shota growled as he strode towards Mike, who was struggling to contain his laughter.
Not only that he's Aizawa Sensei's son, but Mike Sensei's too!
Aoyama giggled, and at that, Mike froze. That, along with Shota lurching towards his cell with renewed vigor, finally saw him snatching his phone back and ending the call before turning to glare icily at all the other teachers in the room.
Not a word!
Shota hissed at the mixed shock and amusement on all their faces, sending an especially threatening look at All Might's barely contained laughter. And Todoroki came up with all that, Khan asked disbelievingly, causing Shota to rub a hand on his face and sigh for the umpteenth time that day.
Yes,
Shota admitted dryly.
He seems to have a fascination with conspiracy theories. I've heard he's developing a blog.
Power loader hummed.
Wouldn't have pegged him as the type.
Conversation in the room slowly returned back to normal, and Shota sent one last death glare at a sheepish Isashi before opening up his text messages. Problem children? Group chat. 1713. Aizawa. Aoyama, detention tomorrow. If anyone else butt dials me, you're getting the same thing. And Todoroki, for the love of God, keep your theories to yourself. Francophile. Whoops! Edgy. Let the record show that I did not participate. Nevertheless, I am sorry, Aizawa-sensei. Large boy. I'm sorry, sensei! Fucking never. I'm not. Direct messages. Shota Todoroki and Togoyami Fumikage. 1727. Togoyami Fumikage. Are you taking suggestions for your theories? Todoroki Shoto. Depends on what you have. Togoyami Fumikage. Consider a tweak to your Shinso and Sensei theory. Todoroki Shoto. Elaborate. Togoyami Fumikage. You know how old Sensei is, yes? Todoroki Shoto. 30 or so. Togoyami Fumikage. And how old is Ida's older brother, the former Ingenium? Todoroki Shoto. Google says 30, I say get to the point. Todoroki. Wait. Todoroki Fumikage. If Ida, Tensei, and Sensei are the same age, and the former has a younger brother that's around 15 years younger than he is, Todoroki Shoto. Then what's stopping Aizawa from doing the same? Oh my god, Shinso is Sensei's younger brother. Your direct message channel has been renamed UA Unsolved. Todoroki Shoto changed their name to Shoto. Shoto, Todoroki Shoto, changed Togoyami Fumikage's name to Bird Boy. Bird Boy! It makes more sense than Aizawa-sensei becoming a father in our age, does it not? Shoto. Yeah, that was admittedly my biggest problem with that one. Keep talking, you brilliant bird bastard. Bird Boy. Happily. Yesterday, Shota wished his students would stop accidentally calling him with trivial things like Kirishima and Aoyama had. Tonight, Shota squinted at his phone's caller ID, cursed, and realized that calling with trivial things was probably preferable to calling with actual problems, by virtue that the latter meant the problem existed in the first place. Bakugo. Shota rumbled into the phone, half awake as he tumbled out of bed and started to snake one leg through his pants, praying it was nothing too urgent, but not holding out hope considering who it was on the other end of the line. He shot a glance towards the clock on his nightstand, the green display flashing 2:39 sadly in the dim room. Get down to Midoriya's room, right now! Was all the Bakugo ground out in response, and Shota just managed to pick up on the faint sounds of panicked breathing on the other end of the line before it went dead. Cursing none too quietly, Shota grabbed the nearest shirt and dashed out the door, swiping his key card off the kitchen counter as he went. His bare feet slapped on the linoleum stairs as he flew down them, reminding him that he'd forgotten to put on his slippers at a moment where he really couldn't care less. Shota counted the flights of stairs as he practically vaulted himself down them, finally reaching the second floor and flinging the door to the hallway open as quickly and quietly as he could. Half a second later, he was standing in front of a dorm room with Midoriya's nameplate on the closed door, a sliver of light shining through the crack at the bottom. He raised his hand to knock, only to stop as the door unlocked itself and swung inward an inch, anticipating his arrival. Shota stepped through the door and closed it quietly behind him without hesitation, taking in the scene in front of him. Midoriya's desk was as messy as Shota might expect, but the mess wasn't contained there. Both the floor and the unmade bed were littered with stray sheets of paper, something containing Midoriya's slanted scrawl, and others Bakugo's neater print. What made Shota pause wasn't the state of disarray, but the state of Midoriya. Anyone in 1A could tell you that the boy was a crier, but Shota had never seen his tears accompanied by sniffles and sobs that racked through the boy's body as he gasped for air. Midoriya was sitting towards the top half of the bed, sheets wrinkled from where he was clutching them in a white-knuckled grip. His shoulders were shaking, his pupils pinpricks in his eyes as they held a 1,000-yard stare. Midoriya's freckles stood out even more prominently against his pale skin, and he didn't seem to have noticed Shota's entrance. Sitting in Midoriya's desk chair and wheeled as close as possible to the bed was Bakugo, clutching on to the bottom of the chair with such force the plastic periodically creaked. He was just within reach of the door, and the way his piercing gaze settled on Shota from the moment he walked into the room told him that Bakugo was probably the one who let him in.
Shota strode forward, crouching down next to the bed to get on eye level with Midoriya as he shot Bakugo a look demanding an explanation, which the boy gave with an unnerved scowl. We were working on the bullshit history partner presentation assignment, and he read something from one of the pages we printed out in the library and just fucking... Bakugo released his grip from the seat underneath him to gesture forcefully at Midoriya and huff in frustration. The gesture was so un-Bakugo-like that Shota might have cracked a small grin if Midoriya wasn't sitting in front of him in the middle of a panic attack. Shota was no stranger to panic attacks himself, so he could tell from the unfocused look in Midoriya's eyes that the best method here would be for the boy to focus on his breathing first. Reaching over and taking Midoriya's hand gently in an effort to avoid startling the boy, Shota brought it to his chest and took an exaggerated breath in. Breathe, Midoriya, he said, simply hoping that his words got through to his student. Come on. In. He puffed his chest out with a large breath. And out, slowly. Shota finished, voice gentle but firm. Midoriya's eyes focused slightly on Aizawa as he struggled to match his teacher's breathing, but any sense of relief Shota might have felt at the development died when Midoriya's breathing began to pick up its pace even more. In between exaggerated breaths, Shota turned to glance at Bakugo out of the corner of his eye. The explosive boy was still seated on the chair, his white-knuckled grip on it having returned, looking awkward, angry, and uncharacteristically uncertain in a way that only he could manage. If Shota hadn't been between him and the door, Bakugo likely would have tried leaving. What's the assignment about? Shota demanded. Bakugo scowled in irritation, and Shota fought to keep his tone even as he explained. A panic attack this severe usually has some kind of trigger. What was the assignment about? Historical myths, and the figures they were based on. Bakugo admitted, his brow furrowing, as probably tried to figure out what specifically had triggered the other boy. We chose Dracula. There's the paper he was reading, he offered, holding the sheet out to Shota, who took it with the hand not currently holding Midoriya's own to his chest. Looking it over quickly, Shota found a section halfway down the page where highlighter marks grew sloppy before stopping altogether. He began to read, his frown deepening as he went on. Despite the fact that Vlad the Impaler, or as he's known today Dracula, was not in fact a vampire, it read, the myth grew to such proportions that one of his more defining characteristics became strongly associated with vampirism. The belief that the only way to kill a vampire is to drive a stake through their heart is largely believed to have been based on Vlad's preferred method of torture and murder. There are many reports of Vlad impaling his victims, true to his moniker, and watching them twitch around the protrusion as they slowly bled to death. Aizawa's breath caught in his throat for a moment. The smaller hand pinned between his own and his chest squeezed feebly, and Shota's head snapped up to look at Midoriya's pained eyes just in time to catch the small keening sound that came from the boy's throat. I was just making some fucking lame joke about how Icy Hot would think Vlad King was a vampire if he read this, and then he just trailed off and started fucking hyperventilating. Bakugo continued as Midoriya and Shota looked at each other in a moment of combined understanding and grief. A moment passed, and Bakugo, taking the silence for disapproval from his teacher, mumbled under his breath, I tried fucking helping, but it just got worse. I'm no good at this shit, so I called you. Thank you, Shota replied sincerely, though his eyes never left Midoriya's. I think I know what the issue is. You should go to bed. Not needing to be told twice, Bakugo grabbed his bag and crept by Aizawa to head for the door. Fuck or whatever, he grumbled under his breath. He reached the door and passed halfway through it before Shota felt him look back at them both. I'll grab my papers from you tomorrow, nerd, Bakugo promised, though it sounded more like a reassurance than the threat it usually would, and with that the door closed behind him with a soft click. Midoriya, Shota began softly after a moment of silence. You're not there anymore. We're not there anymore. It's over. You're in the dorms, in your room. Hachisaki is locked away in Tartarus with no way to use his quirk ever again. Do you understand me? Midoriya's breathing hitched for a moment, but he nodded shakily with watery eyes. Aizawa considered that improvement and kept going. The battle is done. The 8 precepts are disbanded. Eri is safe. No one is in danger. Shota continued, reaching over to where Midoriya had his other hand tightly fisted in his hair and gently bringing it down to hover over his student's hand in a silent invitation.
Can you repeat that for me, Midoriya?
No one is in danger. Izuku hiccuped, accepting Shota's quiet offer and gripping his teacher's open hand so tightly that Shota could have sworn he felt his bones creak. It made sense, considering all the grip-strengthening exercises Izuku thought Shota didn't notice him doing under his desk half the time during lessons, but it made it hard not to wince. Good. Shota praised his student at the shaky sentence, going for a reassuring smile and hoping it didn't look like the baby-eating grin he'd been told to have. Midoriya's shoulders relaxed slightly, as did his grip on Aizawa's hand, so he figured it worked.
Let's try something new, okay?
Shota suggested, grateful when Midoriya managed to nod.
Tell me 5 things you can see, kid.
My figurine? Izuku started shakily before pausing.
Okay, kid, you can only use that once, even if you have 5 different ones in here.
Shota sighed good-naturedly, taking heart at the color Midoriya's blush brought to his cheeks. My desk lamp? Midoriya continued after a moment before continuing with more steam. My laptop? My really messy bed? You!
Great job, kid.
Aizawa praised, his own shoulders relaxing a bit as Izuku ducked at the praise, both the boy's hands retracting from his teacher's to cover his face in mild embarrassment.
Now, 4 things you can feel.
My sheets, my shirt, the bruises on my back from sparring earlier, and my hand. Izuku rattled off, pausing when he noticed Shota's quizzical look at the last answer. It kind of aches when it rains, he clarified sheepishly, holding up his scarred right hand for emphasis.
Right,
Shota replied dryly, filing that away for later thought. No, 3 things I can hear, Midoriya interrupted, and Aizawa tried not to let his surprise show on his face as his student took the reins. The crickets outside, someone snoring upstairs, Kaminari probably, and some question that you haven't asked yet? Midoriya trailed off shyly, reading the atmosphere and showed a single-lifted brow.
Just didn't know that you knew this grounding method,
Aizawa admitted with a shrug. All Might taught it to me a few weeks ago, Midoriya admitted bashfully as Shota came to terms with the probability that his colleague was finally coming into his own as a teacher and mentor. And the fact that Midoriya had had panic attacks before, but considering all the traumatic experiences that Shota's class had been through their first year alone, and how Midoriya seemed to be at the center of them all, it was unfortunately pretty unsurprising, though definitely something to keep in mind. All Shota said, though, was,
"All right, go on."
"Do things I can smell," Midoriya murmured as he continued. "The incense on my desk that Mom bought me last week and—" Midoriya paused, sniffed the air, and frowned thoughtfully. "Eucalyptus?" That was Shota's shampoo, which he'd used a few hours prior, but there was no reason to admit that to his student.
"Good,"
he simply said, a bit more gruffly than he intended.
"Last one."
"One thing I can taste. The curry from dinner." Midoriya grinned weakly, and Shota gave a small huff of laughter in response. Dinner duty had been assigned to Sero and Kaminari, who were probably 2 of the worst cooks in the class. Everyone had been prepared for an inedible ball of slime when Todoroki, of all people, had managed to turn things around. He'd calmly mentioned that he bet whatever the disaster dinner duo managed to make that night would be even better than what Bagago had made the week prior. Katsuki never wanted to back down from a perceived challenge, and stormed across the common room to the kitchen, shouted in Todoroki's unconcerned face for a solid 5 minutes, and then proceeded to kick everyone out of the kitchen so he could prove to that icy hot bastard what good funky cooking is. Bagago, being the best chef in the class by a long shot, and single-handedly prepared a delicious, albeit almost painfully spicy, curry for the entire class that had everyone sighing in relief. Sero and Kaminari let off the hook for dinner. Todoroki had worn a smug look the entire meal, while Bagago silently fumed into his bowl. It was a cheat the rest of the class was definitely going to take advantage of in the future. Sitting up on his bed so his back rested against the wall, Midoriya wiped his eyes with a forearm and sighed shakily.
A few moments passed in silence, Izuku's breathing not under control before Shota broke it.
It was about Night-Eye, wasn't it?
He prompted softly, and Midoriya's gaze fell to his feet.
Yeah,
he croaked in response, beginning to pick at the base of his nails absently. I just couldn't get the image of him out of my mind. He was off the ground, Sensei. I couldn't save him, Midoriya admitted quietly, tears creeping back into his eyes. Shota would take a kind hero over a selfish one any day of the week, but for once, he wished his students didn't take everything so personally.
Midoriya,
he sighed, rubbing a hand across his face and cursing internally when he patted down his pockets and found no eye drops in them. Does it ever get easier? His student interrupted, looking up at his teacher with an impossible hope in his eyes. Sometimes he wished it was easier to lie to these kids so he didn't have to be the one to crush that look.
It gets easier to manage, but it never gets easier to lose someone,
Shota admitted after a moment, looking down at where his hands rested on his thighs so he wouldn't have to see the horrible look of realization dawn in Midoriya's eyes.
It gets easier to go on,
he continued, hoping to provide some kind of solace to a child who'd had to face the real world of pro heroes too soon and too often.
It gets easier to get through the day without feeling like it's your fault. It gets easier to manage the PTSD and the attacks,
Shota assured, finally looking Midoriya in the eyes as he spoke to let the boy know he was sincere.
But it never gets easier to watch someone close to you lose their life, and I'm of the opinion that it shouldn't.
Midoriya thought for a moment before sniffling and wiping his eyes again, nodding solemnly. A hero who's not afraid to lose people doesn't have the same drive for saving lives, he thought aloud, pulling from Shota's vague statement exactly what he'd meant. In return, Aizawa simply nodded. Noticing the protest growing in his knees, Shota got up from the floor and sat down in the chair Bakugo had vacated earlier, handing Midoriya a box of tissues that was on his desk. 2 things anyone could easily tell you about Midoriya Izuku: that he was a crier, and that he was always prepared. The boy wiped his eyes, and Aizawa took the chance to look away in some form of respect for the boy's privacy. He grabbed the papers scattered around the bed and on the floor and began separating them into 2 piles based on the obvious differences in Midoriya's and Bakugo's handwriting. The printed pages all had handwritten notes on them, which helped. The nightmares have been going away, kind of, Izuku admitted wearily, and Shota paused in sorting the papers. Though we might have guessed Midoriya got nightmares based on the circles that occasionally took residence under his eyes on some days, or even just what the boy had been through in the past year, it still sent a pang of guilt and remorse through him at the boy's confirmation. It's been slow, but they're not as often and not as intense, and it doesn't hurt as much when I wake up, I guess. Midoriya shrugged, throwing his tissue into the trash can by his desk.
Progress isn't always linear, Midoriya,
Shota reminded him firmly, having a good idea what the boy was thinking without him having to say it outright.
Just because you had a flashback after a couple of good months doesn't mean that you're suddenly right back where you started.
Midoriya frowned. Logically, I know that, he groaned in frustration, but I keep feeling like I should be over it more than I am. I wasn't the one who lost my quirk or my life or...
You lost a mentor,
Shota interrupted him evenly when it looked like Midoriya was going to work himself up.
You saw someone die, Midoriya. Even if it wasn't the first time that it happened, it was someone you knew, and it sucks. But being a hero means coming to terms with the fact that you can't always save everyone.
I know, Izuku whispered in a voice that sounded far too defeated. Shota's hand twitched, and before he realized what he was doing, the 2 piles of papers were on Midoriya's bed, and one of Shota's hands was nestled in the unruly green mess of Midoriya's hair.
You're doing good, kid,
Shota promised quietly, and it might have been the sincerity in his voice or the way he rustled Midoriya's hair lightly as he said it, but something apparently compelled Midoriya to lean forward, rest his forehead against his teacher's shoulder, and go limp.
Aizawa stiffened for a moment, a bit stunned by Midoriya's baldness, before relaxing again and placing his other hand tentatively on Midoriya's shoulder.
You're doing good,
he repeated in a murmur, and moved his fingers lightly through Midoriya's hair as he started to silently shake. It wasn't like earlier, where Izuku had been loud, gasping breath after breath in between strained hiccups. There were no sniffles, for which Shota was grateful, because he really preferred it when there wasn't snot on his shoulder. But he could deal with tears, he supposed, as he held Midoriya tightly, his biggest problem child, letting the tears silently roll down his cheeks and onto Aizawa's inside-out t-shirt. A little while later, after Midoriya regained control and scrubbed at his eyes with the back of his hand, Shota picked back up the stacks of papers from earlier and handed them to a student.
Yours are on the left, buck goes on the right,
Shota instructed, and Midoriya nodded gratefully. Thanks! He grinned, weak but genuine, as he put them next to his backpack on the floor. Shota rolled his eyes, but there was no real heat behind it, as he said,
Thank me by not staying up until 3 in the morning doing homework that's not due for another week.
Izuku really shrugged weakly in response. Neither of us could sleep, he defended, to which Shota had no response. Shota stood up from Midoriya's desk chair, trying to ignore the boy's wince when he heard Shota's joints pop from the action. Sorry, he mumbled self-consciously, probably already well aware of the poor back support his desk chair offered.
Don't apologize,
Shota dismissed, running a hand absent-mindedly through his hair and preparing to leave before a thought struck him.
Give me your phone for a second,
he demanded gruffly, and watched Midoriya blink for a moment in confusion before scrambling to unplug his phone from where it was charging on his nightstand. 1 8-digit password later, he placed it in Shota's outstretched hand. What are you doing? Izuku asked curiously, craning his neck to see what his teacher was doing.
Don't worry, I'm not going in your photos,
Shota simply responded dryly, allowing himself a small smirk when Midoriya predictably flushed red at the implication. Oh, that's not what I meant, I don't! Izuku stuttered, waving his hands around before eventually covering his face with his forearms in a habit that Toshinori had recently begun to pick up on.
Relax, problem child,
Aizawa chided easily.
I know you're already in therapy, but I have some good websites for dealing with PTSD and survivor's guilt. I'm sending myself a message from your phone, so I remember to send them to you tomorrow.
Oh! Midoriya smiled. That would be great, thank you! Shota merely grunted in response, frowning when he typed his name into the boy's contacts and didn't find any results. He knew for a fact that Midoriya had his number saved, but when the search for Sensei turned up no results either, he glanced up.
Where's my contact?
He asked accusingly, wincing internally when he heard how his voice sounded.
Sorry they came out wrong.
No worries, Sensei, Midoriya assured him with a smile. It's... Izuku's earlier blush returned full force, and Shota could have sworn he saw sweat bead on the back of the boy's neck. It's Here, I'll find it!
Midoriya,
Aizawa interrupted lowly, his tone out for the warning.
What is my contact in your phone?
It's the first one under D! Midoriya squeaked out as his ears gained the same bright red hue that painted his cheeks, and Shota scrolled up only to freeze when he saw it. Dad!
Midoriya.
Shota began evenly, though he didn't get any further before Midoriya started flailing and spewing apologies. I'm sorry! I know that's probably totally inappropriate, and that probably just made you super uncomfortable. Oh my god, I just had Todoroki put the number in my phone because the day you gave it to us, both my hands were in casts and I couldn't type with the range of my fingers, and Todoroki saw All Might in there as Dad Might, which by the way is a joke! Of course All Might's not my dad!
Midoriya.
Shota deadpan, but the boy just kept going. Todoroki already believes that I'm All Might's secret love child or something, and that probably just made the situation worse, even though I don't actually know if that was a serious question he asked me, or if he was joking, but I'm actually pretty sure he was serious, which is pretty weird.
Midoriya.
Shota tried again, only to continue to be run over by Izuku's flustered muttering. But he saw Dad Might in my phone and jokingly added your contact as Dad Head, which I let him do because I couldn't really stop him at the time. And it's funny to see his sense of humor, and also, it's not entirely wrong in a way because you are
Izuku.
Shota finally managed to get out, halting Midoriya's stream of consciousness ramble that probably only served to embarrass the boy more than clear anything up. Sorry! Izuku squeaked out, covering his face with his hands in mortification. The action was actually a bit of a relief to Shota, who wasn't exactly sure what expression he had on his face before he managed to scold it. Judging by the unsettling and warm feeling pooling in the pit of his stomach, however, Shota would guess it was probably softer than he'd prefer.
As long as you don't pull a Kirishima, which you won't since you have a lock screen password, I really don't care.
Aizawa did, pinching the bridge of his nose with his thumb and forefinger more out of habit than out of any real attempt to ward off a headache.
Right, Midoriya mumbled as Shota clicked on his contact and shot himself a quick reminder text, feeling his phone buzz in one of his pockets before returning Izuku's cell phone. I'll change it anyway, Midoriya said apologetically, to which Shota simply shrugged. Izuku tapped a few times on his screen before plugging his phone back in on his nightstand and grinning up at his teacher, tired and sheepish but genuine. If you're sure you're okay then, I'm going to let you go back to bed.
Shota sighed wearily, eyeing Izuku as if he could run some type of diagnostics test from his glare alone.
Yeah, I'm good,
Izuku reassured Shota with a small smile, and despite the boy having the tendency to assure others the same when it wasn't true, Shota found nothing in Midoriya's face or voice that suggested that this time around.
Good,
Shota grunted, starting towards the door.
Get some sleep, problem child,
he said over his shoulder, reaching for the handle.
Okay,
Midoriya agreed quietly, and Shota was halfway through the doorway before he followed up timidly.
Sensei?
Shota responded, looking over his shoulder and raising an eyebrow exhaustedly.
Thank you,
Midoriya murmured, avoiding eye contact and picking at the edge of his thumbnail.
Don't worry about it,
Shota began, only for Midoriya to cut him off in a surprisingly firm voice. No, really? Izuku insisted, raising his stare from the floor to make eye contact with Shota.
Thank you!
Midoriya sent him a smile. It wasn't one of those bright, cheerful ones that he was famous for, Shota thought. The ones that seemed to channel sunshine and determination and the spirit of All Might himself. This smile was smaller, a little wobbly around the edges. Midoriya was biting his bottom lip as he gave it, but his eyes crinkled ever so slightly as he did, and despite its size, it was real and sincere and there. Midoriya remembers the glance he got of Midoriya's phone screen right after the boy had changed his contact number and before Shota had left. Remembers Midoriya clicking the lock button halfway so that he thought he'd turned off the screen, but had really just set the phone down in plain view, screen stuck on the contact for Eraser Dad Sensei. That warm feeling from earlier returned, settling in the same place in his stomach as before, and Shota nodded at Midoriya with a minuscule smile of his own before shutting the door behind him. Problem Children Group Chat 2043 Alien Queen. Aizawa, I know you're out of the norms tonight, but Sensei, we must have felt bad. Pikachu,
we made a mistake and don't know what to do.
Alien Queen, this covered our reputations, our futures, our careers as heroes, everything is jeopardized.
Pikachu, it wasn't our fault, we swear. Okay, so maybe it was a little our fault, but at least remember us fondly.
Aizawa,
where did you hide the body?
Francophile, since quoi far? Define gravity. Oh my god! Yo, Mamo. I think Aizawa Sensei misread the situation. Mr. Murder. Can you fucking blame him with the way these idiots wrote it? I am not sure that the immediate assumption should be that Kaminari-kun and Ashito-chan did something to necessitate hiding a body, however. Alien Queen. Sensei! I can breathe! Pikachu.
We meant that we forgot to study for the history test tomorrow! Oh my god!
Aizawa.
Ashito, whenever you said my phone cannot read untext voice, do you not need help hiding a body because Mike and I can grab the shovel from his trunk?
Octopus. I am so confused by the son of Sensei.
Large boy. Yet normally he'd be threatening expulsion, not offering to cover up a murder. Mind meld. Sensei, you only use text to voice or voice to text when you're too drunk to type and read small messages.
I am sure that Aizawa sensei would not be irresponsible enough to imbibe in libations on a school night, Shinsogun.
That's Zawa. No, matey, he's right. I'm a little bastard. Fucking never. This is priceless. I will sell these screenshots on the internet when the time is right. Edgy. Todoroki, no. You save it for blackmail. Fucking never. Fuck you right.
I cannot believe this! Sensei, how are you planning on teaching tomorrow if you are to be facing the consequences of a drunken night out?
That's our showing videos and sleeping. Honestly, I'm surprised that you hadn't figured. Wait, Mike, no, don't take my phone before I... Hey, little listeners. Sorry about that. Had to confiscate Choda's phone before he did something silly.
Prison Mike Sensei! Don't tell me you're partaking in this irresponsible behavior as well!
That's Zawa. If you're talking about drinking, then no, I'm the DD tonight. But also remember that your teachers are very stressed, very overworked adults, and can drink responsibly and face the hangovers when they wish.
I concede you may have a point, though I do not agree with Aizawa Sensei's decisions in this.
That's Zawa. You don't gotta, that's A-okay. You kids get back to studying now. I'm gonna get Shona some water.
Partake responsibly and hydrate!
21:58. Park Bunch. Sensei over here getting plastered before 9 p.m. What a mood! 22:22.
Kick Leon.
I wake up from a nap and see this. Why did no one ask my present my cat to show up in the back of his car? Guys! Problem children. House rules. Group chat. 9:38. Dead Zawa. 13. Don't tag your teachers saying you have a problem without giving any context. Dad Zawa pinned a message to the channel. 13. Don't tag your teachers saying you have a problem. 10:40.
Sensei, you sent that in the middle of class. We thought you were sleeping while we watched that video. Using cellular devices during instructional periods is most unbecoming of you and faculty.
11:13. That's Zawa. 14. Don't reprimand Aizawa. He knows better, but just doesn't care. That's Zawa pinned a message to the channel. 14. Don't reprimand Aizawa. He knows better, but... Mind meld. Don't call out Aizawa, you mean? That's Zawa. Detention for phone use during class. Mind meld. Say it to my face, you coward. 12:22. Funky elbows. You said it to his face. That hard. F. Small bean. F. Francophile. F. Showed wish he could say that was the last time he texted his students inebriated. If it had been, he probably wouldn't have dug himself into the hole he found himself in a few weeks later. It was something like this. Problem children, group chat, 18:11. Kikleon. Does anyone know where Sensei is? I'm out of orange juice and want to know if I can go to the store.
Aizawa Sensei has the weekend off. All Might Sensei is our dorm parent this weekend, so you would have to ask him. However, I just restocked on orange juice, so you may have some of mine if you wish.
Kikleon.
Oh, okay, awesome. Thanks, Ida. Please use a cup.
Kikleon.
Dang it, fine. It's much appreciated.
2-3. That's our. Did you guys know? Guys, did you know? I'm so drunk right now.
Bug Butch.
Here we go again. That's our. Look at this man. My husband, Husbando. I love him. Father to my child's. Pikachu. Everyone, wake up! This is gold! That hard. Oh my god, Sensei! That's our. I love him. Cutie eyes, 2 birds sitting in a hot tub, safe up for the rest of us. Damn! Mr. Murder. I wish I was asleep, but I'd just like to say, I fucking called it. That hard. You did, babe, you did. That's our. Young love, so beautiful. Always love your boyfriend. Pro tip. Pro tip from a pro hero. Finger guns like my husband. Fucking never. He's even imitating President Mike's iconic bisexual finger guns. Gold.
Alien Queen. Hold up! We're ignoring since it's saying he has kids with Mike!
Pikachu. I kind of assume it's just cats or Eri. Aizawa. No, wrong. We have cats and Eri, but also adopt another child.
Edgy.
Oh my god, wait, is it Aizawa? Yeah. Shin-san. Itoshi. Fucking elbows. What?
Aizawa. You know, like, nya.
The purple boy himself, my melt.
Small bean.
Since I think you mean mind meld?
Okay, never.
God, I wish that were me.
Aizawa.
Shh. That's a secret.
Fucking never.
Wait, what?
Aizawa. Smile. Fucking never.
What?
Mind meld.
Who the fuck tagged me when I was actually finally asleep? Oh god. Oh fuck. Oh no.
Fucking never.
I fucking knew it. Edgy, you led me astray.
Edgy.
I made a suggestion that was more likely, though I never disagreed with you that they were likely family. What a mad banquet of darkness we have tonight.
Defying gravity. I usually don't know what that means, but tonight I'm inclined to agree. Worm Tokoyami, not banquet of darkness indeed. Octopus.
Sensei, are you actually married to President Mike Sensei with Shinzo-kun and Eri-chan as your adopted kids?
Aizawa.
Fuck yeah, I am. Shinzo snap.
Mind meld added scram. Present Mike to the chat. Aizawa.
Babe, you're here.
Scram. Oh, there goes that secret. They didn't even last a year.
Aizawa. The children need to know about our love.
Scram muted Aizawa for the next 8 hours. Fucking never.
No, wait, let him talk.
Die hard.
It was just getting good.
Yo, Mamo. I doubt Aizawa would be telling us this if he was sober. It's best to respect his privacy and wishes. Punk Butch. Don't pretend. I'm literally watching you laugh your ass off right now, babe. Yo, Mamo. I never said I wasn't amused. Scrub.
Go. We'll deal with this on Monday. We're sure it's not too hungover for consequences. Bye.
Alien Queen.
Can we come back here? We have questions!
Pikachu.
The people demand answers.
6:32.
You. Oh dear.
On Monday, right as he drained the last dregs of his coffee, Shota walked into homeroom, prepared for war. As he expected, felt his temple pulse in response to the immediate questions shouted from every angle. He took a deep breath in. He took a deep breath out. He opened his eyes, activated his quirk, and crushed the coffee cup in his hand, the remains falling into the trash can. It was not a reusable cup, and the tinkling of ceramic into the waste bin had its intended effect. All his students abruptly stopped talking, and some began to sweat as they crept back towards their seats.
Let me make things perfectly clear.
Shota growled.
Yes, I am married to President Mike. Yes, we have adopted Shinzo and Eri. No, you may not bother them about it, and if I hear any of you asking intrusive questions or making any sort of accusatory comments, you will be suspended. Shinzo got into the hero course on his own merit, and his own merit alone.
Shota sighed and wiped the ceramic mug dust off his hand before bringing it up to his forehead to rub his temples and ward off the oncoming headache.
Now, you may ask 3 questions, and then we are starting homeroom. I don't care if someone asks a question no one else cares about. I don't care if you want to know more, and I won't answer anything I feel is too personal. Go.
Immediately, almost every student's hand was raised in the air. Shota inwardly groaned, knowing that no matter what rules he put in place, he'd probably end up answering most of their questions eventually. Looking out across the sea of hands, Shota pointed to Bakugo, who he trusted not to ask anything too personal or worthless.
Bakugo.
Bakugo dropped his hand and scowled as he asked, "How common is it for pros to get married?" Ignoring his class's cries of, "Oh, come on!" and "You could ask any teacher that question!" Shota responded,
Common enough. A little less than half of pro heroes get married, and most who do marry another hero. It's considered risky to marry a civilian, especially if the information gets out, and they often don't understand the difficulties being a pro hero poses for their partner. Next.
Hands shot back up, and Shota narrowed in on one in particular before nodding in that direction.
Yaoyorozu.
"Is your relationship public knowledge?" she asked easily, and Shota inwardly thanked her for the leading question. Truly house rule number 12.
No, and we intend for it to stay that way.
Shota answered pointedly, glaring at the students he felt were most likely to post one of the pictures he'd sent them while drunk on a hero forum or social media outlet.
The Snapchat of Shinso's that I sent you was never sent to anyone outside our family, if that's what some of you are wondering.
Sure enough, some hands went down immediately.
That being said, all of the UA faculty know, so there's no need to tiptoe around it with any of them, though there should really be no reason for any of you to talk about our relationship or family at all.
Most of the students nodded reluctantly, and Shota felt himself relax minutely. His students might be busybodies, but they were good kids in the end. They knew how important secrecy could be, and they wouldn't ever jeopardize his relationship or safety on purpose. They'd honestly probably sooner jump off a cliff.
Final question.
He called and looked over the sea of hands, straining to be picked. After a moment of deliberation, he called on Suyu, who put a finger on her mouth and cocked her head.
Are you happy, Kero?
Shota half expected the class to erupt into boos and complaints that the last question was wasted on something so mundane. To his surprise, everyone else's hand immediately went down as the last question was asked, watching him intently and waiting for his answer. Even Bakugo was leaned forward in his seat a bit, though he pretended he wasn't listening. Shota allowed himself a small smile to enter his voice as he answered.
Yes. As I so stupidly, drunkenly texted you.
A few small chuckles there.
I love my husband and our family. I consider myself incredibly lucky.
His students smiled at that with a teary, "So manly," from Kirishima, and a thoughtful scoff from Bakugo, mingling in with a few other statements of congratulations and happiness. "Boo! Cheesy!" Hitoshi interrupted them all, looking straight at Aizawa before giving an exaggerated thumbs down with both his hands and blowing a small raspberry, eyes twinkling with a grin. The class laughed, and Hitoshi's smile grew more confident. Shota knew he'd been nervous about how the class would take the news, but the effort he'd put into getting into the hero course was obvious, and none of 1A were blind enough to accuse Aizawa of favoritism. A few things changed after Shota decided it was a good idea to open up his class's group chat after a few rounds of tequila. In a way, it was nice that Hisashi could stay the night in his apartment without any rumors, that Shinso could call Shota Dad when they weren't in class. Eri predictably loved that she could visit the dorms more often now that everyone knew Shota had adopted her, and there was no image to upkeep. Every once in a while, when Shota or Hisashi were particularly stressed out, the class would go to the other and ask if there was anything they could do to help. Most of the time, it was nothing other than behaving well in class, but the gesture was appreciated by both, even if Shota showed it less. But the biggest change? "Give me your phone, dumbass!" Midoriya chided, swiping Shota's cell from his hand and earning a frown. "What?" he demanded, reaching across his desk to snag it back from her, only for her to shy away from his reach. "Don't worry, just use it. You'll thank me later." She winked as she tossed his phone back to him. He caught it after a brief fumble and noticed a new app downloading on the home screen. When he opened it, he sighed at the title but begrudgingly let it stay, even as its features laughed at him from the screen. Cell phone drunken mode. No more next day regrets. Press the button below to turn on. A few weeks later, 2 shots into a handle of tequila and nowhere near done. Shota thanked Nomori and her foresight and cuddled up against his husband on the couch, a movie playing in the background.